Welcome to Washington Policy on the Go. My name is David Bose. I'm the Communications and Marketing Director for Washington Policy Center. And it is great to be with you today. We've got a pretty brief Washington Policy on the Go with you. I'm sorry for the few minutes late starting period. We had a couple of technical difficulties with the Zoom invite. So my apologies for that. I did want to bring up a couple of different things. First, for those of you who may have missed it, our own Lee Finna has announced she's retiring. Her grandchildren have moved into Seattle, the Seattle area, and she wants to spend more time with them. Luckily, though, she is staying on as our director in a more part-time capacity until we find a replacement. So we can expect to see leave now through the end of November or so. So that'll be nice. But if you want to send congratulations to her or any messages to her, you can find her email on the staff page at washingtonpolicy.org. It's just elfina@washingtonpolicy.org. But you can go to the staff and just find the staff page and just grab the link right there from washingtonpolicy.org. If you had our newsletter, of course, you would already have seen that. But I'd encourage people to say thank you and wish her well. And of course, we'll be seeing her on another episode of Washington Policy on the Go before long as well. Also, I wanted to remind you our annual dinners are coming up, and we, of course, need your help with that. If you value free markets and you value Washington Policy Center and the work that we do, the information that we provide so that you can hold government accountable and affect change, and be warned of various tax increases. Look, even the cap and trade tax, the 43 cent a gallon increase in the cap and trade tax was not on the radar. Media-wise, the governor and the administration was saying there was going to be no cost, pennies, if anything, were going to come from this. And it was Todd's research here at Washington Policy Center that really exploded that and forced that into the public narrative. So I think that the work of the Washington Policy Center is very important. In Eastern Washington, we have as a keynote speaker, Dennis Prager, whose PragerU videos have been seen more than 1 billion times, primarily by younger people under 35. So it'll be fascinating to hear from him. I had the opportunity to have dinner with Prager when I was working on the radio, and he was in town visiting the medveds, and just a really fascinating, interesting, and genuinely nice person. So I would encourage you to check out our webpage there. It's a great opportunity to support Washington Policy Center while at the same time enjoying an elegant evening out. That's at the Spokane dinner at the Davenport Grand. You can get all the information you need at wpcdinner.com. That's wpcdinner.com. Then in Bellevue, we'll have General Keene and Molly Hemingway. Keene, obviously a national security expert with all the crazy things happening in the world today. His insights are going to be invaluable, as are the keen insights of Molly Hemingway. So looking forward to their analysis at our dinner in Bellevue. In both cases, I would strongly encourage you to invite your friends, particularly people who believe in free markets or are open to the idea of focusing on policy rather than partisanship, and focusing on affecting change in Washington, and giving people the information they need to make that change for themselves and holding our government accountable. So invite people, urge people to come, and think of it as your way of supporting Washington Policy Center and enjoying a great time out. Because there's going to be a packed program filled with interesting people and fascinating information. So looking forward to those things in the fall. Right now, I'd like to call on our Director of Agriculture, Pam Lewison, and I want to thank her. This is an extremely busy time for a farmer, and she is a farmer in addition to working at fairs, handling the farm, doing WPC events, now doing this brief Washington Policy on the Go with us. So I know you've got to head off to Yakima, the big event there today for our Summer Solutions series. So we'll get right to it. Let's start with the wolf listing in Washington State. Wolves are a very big deal, particularly in northeastern Washington. In the rest of the state, they haven't been dispersing. The original plan thought they'd be dispersing everywhere, but they're overpopulated in this area, which means, of course, they can be delisted in northeastern Washington, right?
You would think so, yes. So the wolf plan is, to my reading, and I think to the reading of a lot of people, pretty clear that gray wolves should be delisted, at least in the easternmost third of Washington state. Federally, they are delisted in the easternmost third of the state. So there's no reason that we as a state shouldn't come in line with the federal government. It's not often that I get to say that kind of thing. But our state Fish and Wildlife Commission sees things a little bit differently. So they held a hearing, I think 2 weeks ago now, saying to discuss this and have a vote on whether or not gray wolves would be delisted in the state. They voted 5-4 to not only not to delist them, but also not downlist them. So gray wolves are still considered an endangered species statewide. Why this is particularly troubling is that we have seen gray wolves increase since they were officially considered returned to the state in 2008. They've increased at a rate of about 23% year over year, every year since then. So right now we have officially, I believe it's 260 gray wolves in 42 packs that are all officially recognized in the state. The vast majority of those are concentrated in the easternmost third of the state and in the sort of northern region of Washington state. There were sort of assurances by wolf biologists when our wolf management plan was put in place that they would disperse. They would naturally go where they're supposed to go, which is everywhere in the state. That never happened. And so we have one part of the state that's bearing the burden of this predator unnecessarily so, which is why we, Washington Policy Center, myself and Todd Myers, recommended that the state at least consider downlisting gray wolves so that we could start to figure out what to do to manage gray wolves in a more active way. Not remove them, not trap, hunt, kill them, manage them. And what we mean by that is if you have predators who are continually causing problems, continually eating cattle, continually stepping outside the realm of what we would consider a coexistence pattern, we need to do something with those animals. That is an instance where they should be trapped and killed. In any other instance, let them be wolves and do what they do.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know the impact. I mean, my own experience in wolf territory when I'm a hunter myself, and I went into Idaho where wolves were pretty populated, and I've never seen an area more decimated. I mean, there was just the deer were gone, the elk were gone. I mean, I saw one grouse in 7 days, and that was, there was what, 5 experienced hunters there hiking for miles in the middle of an airdrop wilderness event, and nobody saw anything except there was the grouse I saw and a wolf running through to get down to apparently an area down on the cliffs where all the animals hang out now to avoid the wolves. So it was really something.
Studies tell us that the existence, and wolves don't even have to be physically present, just the mere scent of them and knowing that they could be present is enough for cattle to do things like have premature births, be more difficult to be bred back. We see things like excessively low birth rates with calves. They are more likely to be slow to gain weight, to reach market weight. So it actually, it triggers a stress hormone in their body, in fact. So there are lots of things that say just having wolves near to a herd of cattle or even a flock of sheep is of detrimental impact to livestock in the area.
What the in-state administration seems inconsistent. I think it was the week before last, we were talking about how, Todd had written about there was a plan for a new solar panel arrangement near the Tri-Cities area, I think, and all this habitat that was specifically keen for one kind of hawk. And the response of the incident administration was, well, almost all those hawks are dead, or they're probably dead anyway, so no real point in preserving this habitat. We'll just roll with this wildly inefficient and super expensive program that we've got going on, so we can virtue signal. And so they opted to do that, and yet, here for the wolves, we've got their own. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Pam, but wasn't their own definition of what a recovered population be vastly surpassed by the current population? So it's by definition, it should be an overpopulated area right now.
Yeah, so the existing population far surpasses what's listed in the wolf management plan, with the exception of the regional dispersal of wolves. So because, according to the Inslee administration, because there are no wolves west of the Cascade Crest, the wolves, our gray wolf population has not fully recovered, and we should not downlist or delist it. I would argue that because we have so many in a concentrated area, we are more than recovered with our gray wolf population. Making it the sticky situation and saying that, oh, just because they don't want to cross Snoqualmie Pass means that they aren't fully recovered is ridiculous. I don't want to cross Snoqualmie Pass either, and yet I have to from time to time. So I think that there's, I think that's a really minute part of this argument. And it's a part that means that there are a great many people and animals that are suffering. And I do think that it is very much a double standard. And I think particularly it's a double standard that is about who sounds the best in the narrative for the governor at that moment. If you want my 2 cents, it isn't about who's truly doing what's best for the environment or the landscape or for the people. It's about who sounds the best in that larger sort of environmental preaching to the choir.
So let me ask you this. I mean, as a hunter, I'm always interested in wolves and predators and wildlife management and other things. So I'm interested right away. I've also given speeches in Eastern Washington before, Northeastern Washington before, when I was on the radio, where I was, it adjusted what I realized priorities were, because I knew from listening to others that wolves were a #1 issue in that area, and for a good reason. But for the rest of the state that's not experiencing any problems, all I do is read that there's nice wolves there, and usually, I mean, they're a magnificent looking animal, they're beautiful to look at, and so they see this picture and they think, why should I care? What, there's a lot of wolves there, good. That's the way it's supposed to be, so I don't have to worry about this. Why should the rest of Washington care?
Yeah, I think the thing to think about with wolves is that it's a predator. So when we think about, for example, thieves, I think is a great example. When you leave your home to go to the grocery store, for example, you lock your house. Now, in Eastern Washington, somewhere that is well populated with wolves, you don't get to lock your house. Your house is unlocked at all times because wolves are an invasive predator. They don't care about a lock. They don't care about boundaries. They don't care about niceties. If it is something that they want to eat, they're going to go in and take it. And what we have seen in the last few years in particular are game cameras in livestock barns in the middle of the day with gray wolves walking through them. whether they are on a territorial stroll or looking for a calf to pick off and eat, it doesn't matter. They're a thief walking through your house looking for something to steal.
It's funny too, because no picture does justice, and neither do zoos, frankly. When you walk through the Tacoma Zoo and see the red wolves there, they're cool looking, but I've seen I've seen these wolves in Okanagan, and when you get one real close, you see that the size of the animal is breathtaking. I mean, this is not a small. This, I always wondered, would I be able to tell the difference between a coyote and a wolf? Or I just think it's a big coyote. And then the first time you see one up close, you go, oh yeah, I can tell. That's a dog roughly the size of me. And I'm 6'4" and 320 pounds. So, that is a big, big animal. So it's
They
impressive.
are very, very large, and very intimidating. They're not your neighbor's dog.
Where does this end then? So we had a chance to delist. We reached all of the benchmarks in the plan, and supposedly, I mean, I'm guessing that a lot of people at least thought that the plan had some kind of force of law, where you achieve these measures in this area, then X would happen. But instead, our administration has just decided, what, it's not going to happen. We've decided not to. So what's the next step? What do people do? What do they, when do they make this decision again?
So these review processes come up periodically. I believe they're every 3 years. They can do these reviews of what our gray wolf population looks like, and decide if they have reached critical mass of some kind, and decide if that's enough, whatever enough looks like. And so this discussion will come up again, and we will talk about it again. And in the meantime, people who are in that easternmost third of the state will continue to deal with wolves, and we will continue to have arguments about whether or not any lethal removal of gray wolves is too many. And we'll continue to have conversations around, what kind of non-lethal deterrent is appropriate or not appropriate. And we will continue to have these ongoing discussions that we've had what seems like ad nauseum.
We have a question that came in from Donald Keltz. He says, why do we need wolves except to say we have wolves?
I think some folks would say that we need to have gray wolves on the landscape to sort of fulfill the ecosystem. Now, I'm not a biologist, and I can't tell you if that's accurate or not. That's what I have been told on one side of the coin. The other side of the coin that I've been told is that the ecosystem changed, because for more than a generation, we had no gray wolves in our ecosystem. So there are sort of two schools of thought about, do we even need gray wolves? I don't know what the answer is, other than I can tell you the situation is that they exist right now. And whether we like it or not, we are going to have to continue to deal with them because they are here and they're not going to leave.
Next question is from Hannah. What's the natural predator of a gray wolf? And are we bringing that back to create balance?
So gray wolves are what are considered an apex predator. There is no natural predator for a gray wolf.
Yeah, and if you can see on Facebook and others, there's videos of grizzlies versus gray wolves. And because when gray wolves are hunting, there's more than one, right? So it seems pretty evenly matched. In fact, the bear seems outclassed a little bit because they're going to keep nipping at the heels and vulnerable areas of the bear until they wear it down. So it's a pretty frightening predator. So the next step, we won't have another decision in 3 years, I take it, unless I guess there'd be a possible the governor could step in and say, we got to take another look at this, and they'd have to follow suit on that, I'm guessing.
The governor or the legislature could theoretically make a decision. And also, the Wildlife Commission could change dramatically in its makeup. And then we could theoretically have a Fish and Wildlife Commission that changes its chin.
All right, let me change gears for just a moment before I let you go, because I know you got to get to Yakima, but you were also writing about genetically modified organisms. And, I see this well, I've seen it for years. Every so often on my Facebook feed, something will pop up or social media feed, a warning about the dangers of genetically modified foods. And then you wrote, hey, broccoli's okay. It's a genetically modified food. Tell us the point of the blog and what you're trying to say and why you're trying to say it.
Okay, so in our household, we sort of poke fun at people all the time with things like, look at this strawberry that's the size of my hand. It must be genetically modified. Um, so I, I sort of was talking about it in a tongue-in-cheek way, and I used broccoli as my example of things all the time that uh, the moms who they say things like, "I only feed my kids natural things that came down from on high and have been blessed by the rays of the sun and were watered only with distilled rainwater and whatever else." Broccoli does not occur in nature. You cannot forage for broccoli. It it just it's not a thing that sprouts out of the ground on its own. Broccoli comes from the parent plant of mustard. It was bred and created over many, many years of plant breeding. So technically, it is not a genetically modified food. Whoever is out there on the internet, please don't yell at me. I'm not talking about broccoli as a GMO because it isn't. It is a selectively bred plant,
It's a genetically manipulated food because
as
they're
is
choosing the breeding there.
as is its cousin cabbage, as is its cousin cauliflower and Brussels sprouts. There's all kinds. Just it comes from a mustard plant. Similarly, those of you who really love potatoes, they also do not technically occur in nature. They come from nightshade, which is why they're in the nightshade family. So my point is that we should be a lot more aware and a lot more thoughtful about how we talk about the foods that we eat, because the vast majority of them have been manipulated in some way to taste better, to look better, to smell better, to feel better when we bite into them. And there is nothing inherently bad about making something more appealing to eat. And there's nothing inherently bad about taking that one step further in the case of things that are actually genetically modified, like the case of Cosmic Crisp. Everyone has tried a Cosmic Crisp. Cosmic Crisp apples have had a single gene edited so that when you cut them, they don't turn brown.
I had no idea. Never heard of a Cosmic Crisp.
Cosmic Crisp
Now I need to
apples.
look for them. Yeah.
Cosmic Crisp apples are like the newest apple variety. Everybody loves them. And they have had one single gene changed so that when you cut them open and leave them on the counter or put them in your kid's lunch, they don't turn brown.
What
Now,
if does that mean they stay white and then rot while they're white? Or what? So what does that mean?
all it means is that they don't oxidize.
Yeah.
So, and what that does is reduces food waste, because
Yeah.
everyone thinks that a brown apple is bad. It's not bad, it's just rusty. So all of these things that people talk about as being bad, whether it's a GMO or a selectively bred plant, they're not bad for you. They're just things that have been changed to reduce food waste, to reduce things like pests getting into your food, to make things like pesticides more efficient so that we can use less of them on the farm, or to make your food look, taste, feel better.
So the lesson here is if you are worried about your food, just send Pam an email and she will comfort you and set you straight. Remind you of the why
Or I'll
things are
respond with
okay.
a little bit of sarcasm, if nothing else.
All right. Well, Pam, I know you've got to get to Yakima for the Summer Solutions series. By the way, for those of you wondering about the Summer Solutions series, go to our events page and see if we're coming to a town near you. And if we're not, and you want Washington Policy Center speakers to come to a town near you, pop us an email and say, hey, look, there's a club, that wants to have you as a speaker, or we'd like to hear you in whatever the name of your town is, and let us know, so that maybe we can put you on the list for the next round. So look forward to that. Pam, thank you so much for joining today. Thank you, and have a safe drive to Yakima.
Thanks, Dave.
You bet. And thank you for joining us here on Washington Policy on the Go. We'll be back in 2 weeks with more of our summer series of Washington Policy on the Go. Thanks for being patient with us today with our 5-minute late start due to the technical difficulties with the panelist invite for Pam. Microsoft Outlook and Zoom just were not getting along for some reason. So anyway, we will see you in 2 weeks, and be sure to check out our new webpage at washingtonpolicy.org. Thanks again.